This week we give our first impressions of the 2022 Nissan Pathfinder. With gas prices climbing nationwide, everyone is looking to save money on fuel costs, and we share some tips on how to lessen the pain at the pump. We also answer audience questions about premium fuel, tires, and Tesla. Next on Talking Cars. Hi everybody, welcome to another episode. I'm Mike Monticello.
I'm Ryan Pizlakowski.
And I'm Alex Nizick.
So, a couple episodes ago, episode 309, we talked about favorite cars that we used to own and maybe that we wish we still had. And I got to say, Jen Stockberger, Jake Fisher, and I had a real fun time talking about those old cars. And apparently you folks did too, because we got a whole bunch of responses, including some photos and stories about cars that you used to own. We thought we'd take a few moments and go through some of those, read some of the more interesting ones that we got. And as always, want to remind folks, if you do have, comments, questions, if you want to send in a 30-second video clip, the place to do that is talkingcars@icloud.com. So let's take a look at some of the fun stuff that people send in about their favorite cars. Alex from Southborough, Massachusetts says, boy, did the cars I wish I'd kept segment hit me right in the gut. I bought a 2002 Honda S2000. This car was such a joy. It was essentially hand-built on a dedicated production line by Honda in Japan, and the way it drove, the S2000 handled like it was on rails. The most astonishing 6-speed manual transmission I've ever driven. And I couldn't agree more. When I think of, manual transmissions, I think, Honda S2000, I think Acura NSX, and I think Mitsubishi Lancer Evolution 8 with the 5-speed manual. Those are three of the absolute best manual gearboxes I've ever driven.
The S2000 brings me back to when I first started working at the track. One of the very first, what I'll say, fun cars that I got to take home, because I was young when I started. I was 18 years old, and it was a few years later that I was able to take these, car home. And the S2000 was a car that I took home, and I barely fit in the thing because I'm 6'2", and it's a little bit snug. But what an amazing car! It's legendary because I don't think we'll ever see another car like that again. I mean, the thing redlined at like 9,500 RPM or something crazy. I mean, it was a whaler, and then the handling, like you said, it was like it was on rails. It was just an absolute treat to drive. I'll always remember that cars.
Yeah, I'm kind of jealous that you guys got to spend. I've never really driven one, but it's definitely a dream car of mine, especially that AP1 that gets the 9,000 RPM redline that you mentioned. And with the way prices have been going on those, I think it'll probably stay a dream car.
Yeah, true. All right. Okay, Roger says, I noticed all your favorite cars were generally your first car. I had two 1969 BMW 2002s that I got in 73 and 74. Loved them, kept them for 14 years, adjusted my own valve clearances. Remember that? Ryan, Alex, when was the last time you adjusted valve clearances on a car?
I think I have to on one of mine, but I haven't done it yet. So
well, get to it. Don't delay. Corey from Vancouver, Washington says, my favorite car I've ever owned was a 1994 Honda Civic Del Sol SI. I don't know what the sales numbers were for the Del Sol, but I'm shocked it didn't last longer. It still holds a very special place in my heart. I am with Jake Fisher on this one. My favorite car was the 1986 Toyota MR2. I had it through college and drove it through the winters. It was so balanced that I didn't need snow tires. Absolutely love this car. So if you watched episode 309, and if you didn't, shame on you. Go back and watch it right now. We'll wait. You go watch it, and then come back. So Jake said that his favorite car was his first generation MR2, as with Harold.
Did he get rid of it? Did Jake get rid of it?
He still has it. So
I was going to say,
yeah. He turned it into his race car, and he now wishes that he had never done that because now it's totally unlivable for the street. Because it's all, suspension stiffened up and lowered and all that, and, all that kind of stuff. So he wishes it was in stock form still.
I got to drive that car years ago. He had it at the track, and he was getting it ready for a race at Lime Rock, and I got to drive it around a little bit. And yeah, that car, you could say balanced is the word. I mean, that car was extremely well balanced. And then if you have it set up for racing, it's corner balanced and weighed and everything. So it was an incredible car. Not a lot of power, but
let me ask you this:
fun car. Yeah.
Jake thinks he's all an engineer. How was his suspension tuning? Did you like the setup?
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's super stiff. It's a race car, and this was years ago, so I have a little more knowledge now than I did then. But yeah, I mean, it was on rails. It was if it had more power, it would have been like a supercar almost.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, amazing stuff. So Mike from East Northport, New York says, my favorite car is my 2002 Toyota MR2, which I still own. It has more than enough power for me and handles like no other car I've ever owned. As you guys can see from Mike's photo, that's a third generation MR2. Jake's and Harold's was the first generation. And yeah, regardless of the generation, all of them were great handling.
Have you ever driven one of those? I never got to drive the third gen.
Yeah, I did. It was a great handling little car. Again, it didn't have much in the way of power, but man, it handled really cool. Go ahead.
No, sorry. I just always loved the look of them, and I had I knew what the MR2 where it came from, and now that car just looks like a blast to drive. Yeah.
that third gen car is actually one that I've been semi-actively trying to find one, because I feel like that would be perfect for around Connecticut on the tighter back roads and stuff with the mid-engine. But yeah, I don't know. They're hard to find.
Okay. Well, anyway, that was a lot of fun, folks. So thanks for your interest, and thanks for sharing our enthusiasm for these cars, in this case, kind of older cars. So let's move on to our next segment, which is we're kind of with the onset of the summer travel season and gas prices unfortunately going up. We thought this would be a good time to talk to you guys about strategies to fine-tune your technique to maximize fuel economy, and hopefully make things a little easier on your wallet. So we actually have a story related to this up on our website, consumerreports.org, and it's called 10 Tips to Get the Most Out of a Tank of Gas. And we're not going to go through all 10 tips right now because we want maybe you guys to do a little reading on your own, some research. But we are going to give you a few of the tips that we find pretty interesting. And Alex, we're going to start with you.
Sure.
Because maybe something that's forgotten about a lot is how much your vehicle's aerodynamics and the things that you do to your vehicle can affect fuel economy. So talk to us about that.
Yeah, sure. So a lot of work goes into a modern vehicle to make sure it's aerodynamic and fuel efficient in that regard. So it's less important at slower around town speeds, but at higher highway speeds. Basically, if you look at the drag equation, drag is proportional to the square of velocity. So the faster you go, the more drag you get on the car. And then also in there is your coefficient of drag, which you're changing by adding stuff to the roof of your car or anywhere on your car, a bike, a kayak, whatever it is. And then also surface area is in there in that equation. So you're changing all those things basically by adding stuff to your car. And like I said, less important at around town speeds, but the faster you go on the highway, the more that's going to start sucking from your fuel economy. So basically, what I would recommend is if you're going on the highway, if you can, take stuff off your car if you're not going to use it. Or if you are traveling somewhere with, kayaks or bikes or whatever it is, maybe take it down a couple miles an hour. If you're doing 70, maybe do 65 and it'll make a big difference on your fuel economy.
Ryan, I like to call you, our tire tester extraordinaire.
Because, sounds really nice.
Because you're obviously heavily involved in the tire testing program. Actually, it'd be nice if someone would give me a nickname. Why don't I give you guys all these nicknames? No one ever comes up with a cool one for me. But whatever. No, who cares?
We're still working on it, Mike.
Since you know so much about tires, tell us about how important maintaining proper tire pressure is related to fuel economy.
Yeah, so I mean, you hear it all the time. Check your tire pressure, and if you don't, you should. You should always check your tire pressure once a month. Typically, you could lose a psi every month. In normal temperatures, if the temperature drops, 10 degrees, you could lose another psi. But cars were designed a certain way, like Alex was talking about, to maximize performance and fuel economy. So when your tires are underinflated, it's more energy. It takes more energy to roll that tire over the surface. Now you have 4 of them; they're touching the road, so that's 4 of them now slowing you down if they're all you say 4 or 5 psi low. You don't want to overinflate them either because, like I said, there's performance involved too. So if you put too much air in them, it picks a tire up off the asphalt too much on the outer sides and it changes the footprint. So the footprint's important for grip and handling, cornering, all that stuff. There's an optimum footprint that they're looking for, and that's why on your door, inside your door placard in your car or in your manual, the car itself will give you the proper pressure to run. On the sidewall, there's a maximum pressure. You don't want to use that unless you are, you do need that type of a condition. But a normal car, you want to use what it says in the placard because it's it was designed that way to go with those tires that the original size tire that came with it. So. Yeah, I mean, it's very important. It's not even a fuel economy. If you're going on a long trip, you don't want to have a blowout because you had too low pressure. Low pressure in the tire can build up a lot of heat, lead to a tire failure. Now you're stuck on the side of the road with your family and all your stuff. So tire pressures are extremely important, and just a general look over. Make sure your tires look like they're up to snuff too.
Give them a good inspection every once in a while.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Yeah, look for bulges, cracks, all that stuff, and check the pressures once a month, please. It'll go a long way.
I love it. So the tip I want to talk about is driving evenly, which may sound weird, like what's the big deal with that? But but actually, if you think about it, you want to avoid accelerating hard, and braking hard. Think of it sort of like, what's the saying? Everything in moderation, right? That kind of the same thing goes a long way here. I mean, so when you're accelerating from stop, obviously you don't want to hold up traffic, but when you floor it, take off really hard, you're ruining your gas mileage. And the same thing when you want to anticipate what the traffic is doing ahead, so that you don't have to suddenly brake really hard. You're losing all your momentum. You can kind of make a game out of it, right? The game is to get the best fuel economy you can get. Try and beat, the last fuel tanks record that you got. Check out that story. I think it can really give you guys some good ideas to think about, some ways to maybe change your driving habits so you can get, maybe another couple miles per gallon and save you a little money while these fuel prices are up and while you're potentially doing a lot more driving. So before we go any further, I just want to talk to you folks real quick about the Talking Cars donation program. If you don't know, Consumer Reports is a nonprofit organization. Everything that we do, we're able to do because of memberships as well as donations from folks like you. So every little bit can help. And because of the money we get, we're able to put out this podcast that we love doing for you folks. If you can find more information at cr.org/give talking cars. And thank you guys so much. So let's move on to this week at the test track. And this week, we're going to talk about the redesigned 2022 Nissan Pathfinder. These are going to be our first impressions. We rented a Pathfinder Platinum 4-wheel drive from Nissan to see what the new model is all about before we buy our own for the CR test program. The Pathfinder has a 284 horsepower, 3.5 liter V6 with a 9-speed automatic transmission. The one we drove that we rented from Nissan costs $50,290. Just a quick history on the Pathfinder. When it came out, it was, like a blocky looking two-door 5-seat model with real off-road abilities. As it evolved over the generations, it kind of got to the point where this last generation felt more like a minivan, in like SUV clothing. I mean, it was bland to drive. It had clumsy handling, and its continuously variable transmission that it had just kind of ruined the whole experience. So, Alex, I'm going to start with you.
Sure.
Talk to us, like, mechanically and stylistically, what's changed with this one versus the last generation?
Stylistically?
Yeah, so
that's a word, Ryan.
All right,
making it a word.
I'll add it to the dictionary.
Yeah, so it's redesigned, like you said, but it is definitely still a car-based platform, right? So we're talking unibody. It's not like a return to form like the original or some off-road SUVs where they're body on frame and all that. So we're still talking a car-based platform, which is, I think what most people would actually prefer if they were to drive them both. And this is still a 3-row SUV, roomy. But stylistically, they've kind of gone back a little bit and made it more boxy, which I can appreciate. I think it looks a lot better. It avoids some of that minivan look that it had before. But I think the real news, or the big news anyway, is the return to an actual automatic transmission. And it reminds me of the MDX a little bit that we talked about a few weeks ago in some regards, in that it's a bigger, naturally aspirated V6, which is kind of somewhat rare nowadays with a 9-speed transmission. So.
Yeah. So Ryan, styling can only go so far. They can make the outside look however they want, but what's this new one like to drive? Especially, we want to compare it, also to what's out there right now, but it's hard to not compare it to what, where it just came from. What's the powertrain, ride and handling like for you with this new one?
Yeah. So, handling right off the bat is definitely better than the previous generation. I wouldn't go ahead and say this is some sporty, wonderful to drive SUV. It's very nice. It's acceptable. I think it's it's for its size. It's quite a bit bigger than the previous generation. It doesn't feel as big, but it is bigger. But it handles nicely. The steering isn't the most engaging, and it's got some it's got a little bit of body roll. You can feel some of the weight, but it's not bad. It's quite good. But the 9-speed and that engine, that's what does it for me. It just drives like a nice normal vehicle. It's got plenty of power. It shifts when it's supposed to. I think I remember being there was a little bit of a delay on some of the takeoffs, but other than that, I was really pleased with it. I think the interior is really nice. Nice touches everywhere. I'm not sure our model, the model we rented was probably a little bit of a higher trim, but it's the seating position, everything about it was really nice. I think the touchscreen had a little bit of a delay that I found a little annoying, but the little nuances that they'll work through, I think. But right off the bat, it's considerably better than the last one. I would certainly, we'll see how it tests when we get one. I'm sure we're getting one. I would certainly be watching for that, a future car to tell people, hey, this is something you might want to check out.
Right. Alex, you pretty much agree with Ryan here, and also talk specifically about the ride. How's the ride, ride to handling compromise?
Yeah, sure. I thought that they struck a pretty good balance. I'd say, it's competent enough where it's not totally mundane to drive, but it remains pretty comfortable. I think it did a good job soaking up the bumps, all that sort of stuff. It may not be totally engaging to drive, and its size kind of shows up a little bit if you're on back roads making, left to right turns consecutively like that. But yeah, overall, I think it's nice and competitive. And just to add on to the powertrain component, I think something that is a little unique is, at least if you equip it properly, it can tow, they say, up to 6,000 pounds, which, at least for a car-based SUV like this, is pretty good. Yeah. So if that's something you're looking for, and then when you're not towing, you can get some, we'll see what the fuel economy is like, but theoretically some better fuel economy than if you were to choose something like a Tahoe.
Yeah. That means you can tow a pretty good sized boat, or definitely, decent sized travel trailer with something like that. Let's talk about driving position and seat comfort. Alex, do you fit in this thing? Obviously it's a big SUV, but sometimes there's center console intrusions, left footrests that are out of position, armrests that aren't placed well. How was this one?
Pretty good. I had no complaints. Sometimes I sit a little closer, I think, than some people my height, but which can result in that right knee issue sometimes, but I didn't really have that here. I thought the view out was pretty good. I was a little disappointed by the seat, and I only say that in the context of the Rogue that we just tested. Kind of had this like really nice body hugging seat that when you get into it makes a really good first impression. And it's not that the Pathfinder seat was bad, but I was expecting to have at least that seat that's in the smaller Rogue here, but it didn't seem to be the same to me, and I guess it was a little let down.
I thought it was quite comfortable in terms of the cushions, but I agree it does lack bolster, side bolstering support, and I did run out of the front cushion tilt up adjustment, to give me some more leg support. So it wasn't, but I didn't find it uncomfortable. Ryan, you're about to say something. Talk to us.
Yeah. And I meant to touch on that. It is comfortable, but it's somewhat simple by design. It's a basic type of seat, but you know what? Sometimes that works, and here it works. A little more bolstering. They could fluff it up a little extra here and there, but it's in general it's pretty good. I'd like to say though, in general, I feel like Nissan in the past few years has really stepped it up with some of their cars. The Sentra. The Rogue is quite nice. This is, so far quite nice. It's kind of a breath of fresh air because, like we said, the last Pathfinder was, So.
And it was around for a while.
Yeah. long time.
Yeah, it seems like they've gone from making cars that, like I said, are just kind of like to suddenly, they're getting the interior right. This vehicle has a fair amount of padded surfaces and what appears to be pretty nice quality stuff. Again, we'll see what the interior of our vehicle, is like. This is, as we said, a top platinum trim. So sometimes the interior is a little bit nicer on those, but we'll see. I thought the second row was quite comfortable. I thought the third row, again, it's hard to judge third rows because they're, unless the vehicle's, a gigantic van, it's going to be tough to make a third row that's pretty comfortable. And I wouldn't call the third row comfortable. I thought, foot space was tight in between the second row seat rails. There was plenty of headroom, but the seat is very flat. And again, it's low. So your knees end up being up in the air. So again, it's mostly going to be for kids, but it's right. Will you agree? But I did think the second row was pretty good.
Well, the second row is quite good. The third row this is one of these SUVs that they stuff a third row in, and it works for small children or adults in a real pinch if you need to sneak somebody a short ride. But you're not going to sit somebody back there for long, comfortably, an adult anyway.
Ours had the captain's chairs, so I believe you can get a bench seat as well, but the captain's chairs made it pretty easy to, there's like a button on the back side of the backrest that just kind of flings the seat forward and you can walk back there. And then it also has this kind of interesting, and I'm not sure who would end up using this, but a removable center console in between those two captain's chairs in the second row. And you can pretty much just lift it out. I don't know if it stores on board or what the deal is with that and who might use it, but kind of an interesting feature.
Your question is more, why would you take it out? Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
I could see people, sometimes you go to pick up something at Home Depot or you do something and it's like, just get this stuff out of here, sometimes you can take that third row out of like the old Tahoes and stuff, and sometimes it's nice to just get rid of it, even though it doesn't store in the vehicle. You just put it at home for a little bit.
Yeah, that makes sense.
All right, let's touch on one last thing, which we always go to these days, which is infotainment and controls. Alex, it's pretty similar to the Rogue, yes, and that's a good thing for the most part.
Totally, you got it. The touchscreen is pretty much a carryover from the Rogue, it seems, and I think that's a good thing. It's not flashy, it's pretty basic, but it gets the job done, and it has things that you want, like wireless CarPlay, wireless Android Auto, so I think that's a good thing. And I would like to commend Nissan for not going with the capacitive touch control trend that's going on. Everything looks modern and stylish, but it's still physical buttons, and I think they did a great job. You got knobs, you got buttons for everything, so
that's fantastic.
Kudos for that.
Yeah, absolutely. As far as active safety and driver assist features, the Pathfinder comes standard with forward collision warning, automatic emergency braking with pedestrian detection, blind spot warning, rear cross traffic warning, rear automatic braking, and lane departure warning. So you can read the entire first drive with even more information on cr.org. And as we said, we'll be buying one for our fleet. And as soon as we do, we'll put on our braking miles, and then we'll get it through the program and have full road test results after that. So let's move on to audience questions. Don't forget to send those questions, comments, 30-second video clips to talkingcars@icloud.com. We love the videos, and this week we got several in. So we're going to start with the video questions, and let's go to Nick from Columbus, Ohio, and see what Nick is asking us today.
Hey, Talking Cars. I've got a 2021 CX-5 GTR. I've had it for a few months now, and I've been putting in premium gas since I got it. I'm wondering, is there going to be a big difference if I put regular in there, not getting that full horsepower and torque on the turbo? And then secondly, is there any danger of switching back and forth between regular and premium gas? Love the podcast and keep up the good work. Thanks.
Okay, so Nick is talking about this GTR, which is really a Grand Touring Reserve, but I actually kind of love, Alex, that he calls it a GTR.
I feel like I'm allowed to be look into the Mazda Club a little bit with that. And maybe that's what enthusiasts call it. I love it.
So he's spot on though that he knows this stuff, which is that on 87 octane, it makes 227 horsepower and 310 pound-feet of torque. On 93 octane, it makes 250 horsepower and 320 pound-feet of torque, but you don't have to run it on premium, right? So he has two questions. Will he see a big difference in by running regular instead of premium in terms of horsepower? And is there any danger to switching back and forth between regular and premium?
Yeah, so first of all, Mazda's pretty unique and interesting that they even give 2 ratings for this turbo engine. That's pretty unusual. So off the bat, that's definitely interesting to notice, and I'm glad that you pointed it out. So as far as if you're going to see the difference, I would say that totally depends on your driving style. If you're somebody who really, dips into the throttle quite a bit, then yeah, you'll probably see it. But if you just kind of loaf around with the car, it may not be worth it to spend the extra money for the premium. So I would say just experiment and try it out. So digging into it a little bit further, Mazda doesn't actually recommend, at least that I could find, that you should put 87 or you should put 93 in. So on their website, if you go and build a car, for example, it actually says 87 recommended. But then if you go into the owner's manual, it actually doesn't say anything about it, which is pretty interesting. And I figured out that the EPA is actually rating the fuel economy based on running it with 87. So I can't say that you'll get different fuel economy, but to at least match what the EPA is getting, you should put 87 in. But to answer your last question there, Nick, definitely no harm in switching back and forth. The engine is rated for both, and it's designed to handle both. It basically automatically adapts to whether you put in 87, 93, or end up with a blend based on what you put in. So definitely no harm in switching. So I would say try it out and see what you like more.
All right, well, that's good to know at least. So maybe if you're feeling a little flush with money, go for the 93 that fill up. If things are a little tight that week or month, go with the 87.
I was gonna say
gas is more expensive. So
I was gonna say real quick, if he does try to test that out, you got to let a full tank go in between so that you get a pure 91 or 87 or whatever.
Yeah, like put 93 in a couple times. So it's,
like you just said, you're gonna end up with a mix in between. So.
Right. Mm-hmm. Okay. Good point, Ryan. Okay, let's move on to another video question. This one comes from Nashith.
Thank you for answering my previous question. That was very helpful. I eventually settled on a Tesla Model 3. Just last week, I heard that the Tesla Model 3, starting this month's orders, has removed radar from their car and is going to rely purely on optical sensors. And as a result of that, certain safety features are going to be disabled for a, quote, short period of time. One of them is going to be the forward collision warning, which to me seems like a pretty big safety feature. So I was just curious, what did you guys think? Is that going to impact that car's rating? And do you think I should treat that as a deal breaker? Thank you, and keep up the good work.
All right, so this is kind of a confusing one. On the one hand, I'm glad it was brought up. On the other hand, it's a little hard to answer, but the short answer is yes. This has affected the Model 3's rating as a CR top pick. But it's a fluid situation, as a lot of things are with Tesla, and the reality is it could change tomorrow. But here's the story. Tesla has decided to no longer equip Model 3 sedans and Model Y SUVs with radar sensors, instead relying on a camera-based system called Tesla Vision. And Tesla said these vehicles may be delivered with some features temporarily limited or inactive for a short period of time as the automaker introduces the new technology. This is according to a Tesla blog post. For those of you that don't know, we do reach out to Tesla quite often, but they've pretty much gotten rid of their public relations arm. And so it's very hard to get an answer from Tesla about these things. So as of this podcast recording, NHTSA, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, has said NHTSA updated its 5-star ratings website on Wednesday, May 26, to account for production changes that Tesla reported about its 2021 Model 3 and 2021 Model Y vehicles. Due to these mid-year production changes, vehicles produced on or after April 27 have not received NHTSA's checkmark for recommended safety technologies, because NHTSA's 5-star ratings only assigns a checkmark when the technology has either been verified by NHTSA or reported by the vehicle manufacturers as meeting NHTSA's performance criteria. Since neither of those have happened yet, they had to take away the checkmark. So NHTSA told CR that it rescinded the checkmarks after Tesla briefed the agency on production changes due to the transition to Tesla Vision from radar. And because of that, Consumer Reports, we changed our rating, and we no longer list the Model 3 as a top pick. So here's what our own Jake Fisher, for those of you who don't watch regularly, he's in charge of all of our vehicle testing at Consumer Reports. He said, it's extremely rare for an automaker to remove safety features from a vehicle during a production run, even temporarily. But this isn't the first time that Tesla has done this. In 2016, some Tesla Model X vehicles were sold without active AEB, a problem that took 6 months for Tesla to rectify through a software update. And in 2018, some owners lost automatic emergency braking for more than a day after a software update. So that's what's going on. As soon as NHTSA changes their rating, assume that they do here at some point, we will then change ours. But, we go by NHTSA. So that's what's going on with that. So as far as whether to buy a Model 3 right now, yeah, you might buy one and it may not have those safety features. So it's something to think about. Let's move on to another one. This comes from Adam from San Diego, and this is another video question.
Hey, Talking Cars. My dog and I have a question. If you have an EV, is it better to charge it or plug it in every day up to maybe 80 or 90%, or leave it unplugged throughout the week until it gets down to about 20% and then plug it in once per week? Thanks.
So, Alex, Adam and his dog want you to answer this question for him.
Yeah. Thanks, Adam, and definitely cute dog. So the latter that you mentioned is actually recommended. So to get the most life out of your battery over time in your EV, you would want to theoretically avoid spending time with the battery at 100% or, theoretically 0%. So you want to kind of keep it in a range where it's not fully discharged, but also not fully charged. So if it's realistic for you to plug it in daily and keep it between like the 20 and 80% range, then that's going to get you the most life over time. Now, of course, I think, don't go out of your way to, induce range anxiety if you're not going to make it somewhere you're going just because you don't want to charge it up to 100%. Drive your vehicle how it's meant to be driven and, don't stress about it too much. There are a lot of other things, too, that can contribute towards the life of the battery, like, it getting really hot over time or really cold and all of these other things. So it's kind of like your iPhone, where they just recently implemented this feature where it tries to not charge over 80% until you absolutely need it. So if you plug it in at night, it sits there at 80% until maybe an hour before you get up, and then it charges the rest of the way. So you can kind of think of it like that. Yep.
I had no idea that was going on, and I have an iPhone. I really need to be more on top of the technology.
It'll say scheduled charging or something, right?
You can turn it off if you want, but it kind of holds true for lithium-ion batteries, whether they're in a car or a cell phone.
See, I learned something every time I watch this podcast. Let's move on to another question. This one comes from Sean. Sean says, we have a BMW X2 with run-flat tires. They came with a little ridge to sort of protect the rims, but to no avail. Would we be able to put on tires that are a little wider to protect the rims better, or maybe a larger, more protective rim ridge made by the tire manufacturers? And I got to say, there are a few things that are more just deflating, because I hate to admit it, but I've curbed a few wheels in my day, and there's nothing more deflating than, well, there are other things, but it's one of the most deflating things to park and not realize there's a curb right there, or realize you got so close and you hear that scraping noise and you're like, oh, please only have rubbed the tire, and you get out. And if it's a sports car, inevitably you damage the rim, and it's just, it's terrible. Ryan, so talk to us here.
Yeah, especially those nice granite curbs that are nice and squared off that we have around here in New England. Don't put a wider tire on the car. That's not going to give you that lip, believe it or not. You want to stick with the same size tire that came on the car for sure. There are tires that have that little rubber lip. It's kind of a little bit of a shoulder that sticks out, and it's a sacrificial piece of rubber there, basically, that's protecting the rim and the tire itself, because there's a lot of now sidewall tire behind that, and that's more important the further you get in there, right? Without like window shopping and doing a lot of research, it's hard to tell you where to, or which ones to get, or what does that. The other which ones do that. The other thing is you're looking at run flat tires, and you're already in a very small market. There's not a ton of run flats out there. BMW is notorious for this. They put run flats on nearly all their vehicles, and there's just not a lot of choice there. So, I mean, my advice is don't change the size. That's not going to give you that extra lip. You're just going to have to do some research and see what you can come up with. You could go to a non-run flat if you wanted, I suppose, but you're not going to have a spare. You're going to put a spare in the trunk. It could also change some of the handling aspects in the ride, because the car was designed to have run flat tires on it, which are naturally stiffer. It gets a little messy. But I would definitely not change the size to get that rubber lip, because that won't happen.
All right. Well, Sean, hopefully that helps you a little bit. That's going to do it for this week's episode. If you want to learn more about the cars and the topics we talked about, you can click on the links in the show notes. Don't forget to send those questions, comments, 30-second video clips to talkingcars@icloud.com. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you next week.
because that won't
Well,
happen.
that
what
alone.
I could say, what I could
I was
say
gonna-
is, sorry, what I could
Please.
say is stay
Please,
away.
I would like Ryan to speak.